And let's see, they promote team unity by that clarity that they give in the communication that they share. So if everyone's aligned to the same vision and understands the goals and the next steps that are needed, that creates team unity. They prioritize consistency. What we do for one, we want to do for all, and what we don't do for one, we don't want to do for another. They prioritize consistency in implementation of ideas, in strategy, in consistency in the way that we communicate. It's just something that they are marked by. They harmoniously integrate others by seeing the gifts that other people on the team have and the congregation have. They might recommend who should be at the table for certain events and certain boards and things like that, because they have a pulse on who's doing what. And importantly, they remove obstacles and barriers with a can-do attitude, which can be frustrating sometimes to other members on the team. But that's the goal, is to remove the obstacles and barriers that might stand in the way of implementing the vision that the visionary cast. Every visionary needs an integrator, because when the visionary is forced to integrate, the wheels of progress move slowly because they must stop casting vision in order to implement vision. They need an integrator there to turn their ideas into an actionable plan that everyone can follow. So, are you a visionary or an integrator? You can share. Y'all are not using the chat, but I invite you again to share in the chat if you are a visionary or an integrator. Some key opportunities that I see in the role of the executive assistant. Some of these are very probably clear, but in terms of calendaring, like what specifically does the integrator do? As far as calendaring, yes, I schedule Pastor Rivers' meetings, but I'm also a gatekeeper for his schedule. I protect his time, I consolidate requests, I block schedule so that he has the most time, because he doesn't need to spend his whole day, every day in meetings. If I can block his calendar on one certain day and he can go back to back to back to meetings, he prefers that than me scheduling one meeting here, where he's meeting every day and there's no dedicated time for him to sit and do what he does best, which is the research, development, casting vision, all of those things. So that's one of the things that I do when I'm calendaring for him. Also, when I schedule him for a meeting, I don't send him in blind. I try to find out as much as I can about what the person wants to meet about with boundaries. Some people have very personal things they need to meet about, but I try to generally give him as much of a heads up on what he's going into a meeting about. One question he recently asked me is there any reason I can't do XYZ on such and such date? So what he's hoping that I will have a pulse on is, are there any other church commitments? Are there community obligations? Is it homecoming weekend for one of the colleges in the area, which means people won't want to be at the church for a gathering, they would rather be at their homecoming? Is there something on his personal family calendar that would interfere with this request? All of those things go into calendaring. The next thing is capturing. When he casts vision, my role is to catch that vision that he shared, taking notes, always, all the time. I write everything that everyone says. Even in a staff meeting, I have notes on who said what, whose idea was what, where are we going next, all of those things I have in my notes. And one of the things that I found really helpful is to make sure that I'm always dating things, because if he said, that helps me when I look back in my notes to know which meeting, who was there, what their thoughts were at that time. If the thoughts now have changed, I have dates to help me in the progression of those. Catch ideas that seemingly sometimes are random. Sometimes he may call me from the car with a thought, and I need to catch that thought because he's driving. There's no way for him to capture it. But he may come back later and say, I had a thought about something such and such, XYZ day. I make sure that I'm catching all of those things. So capturing is a big part of the role of an integrator. Communicating. One thing that I'd like to remember here is that I'm communicating on his behalf. Many times people will email me in hopes that that information will get to him. So when it does get to him and I'm replying, I remember that I am replying on his behalf and that my response needs to be clear and accurate. I want to match their positive energy. So if they are really excited about what they're sharing, when I respond, I don't want to be deadpan in my response. I want to match their positive energy. And if they are really upset about what they're emailing me about, in my response, I try to put some sugar on it, as we call it, just sweetening the mood of and the tone of the response so that I'm not matching negative energy. That's never the goal. Many times, if responding to requests, we use a yes, no, yes strategy, which says, like, say it's something we have to decline. Then the yes, no, yes would look like, thank you so much for this opportunity. Pastor Rivers, really appreciate you thinking of him. The no, unfortunately, he's not able to participate at this time. And then the yes, please keep us in, please remember us next year when you're scheduling this event. We would love to have another opportunity to share with you. So that's a yes, no, yes when communicating. I don't want to just say, oh, sorry, he can't do that. We want to leave them on a positive note. So that's communicating. The next one is constructing. Constructing systems, processes, plans. When your visionary casts a vision, that's what they're casting. They're not going to really generally give you the step-by-step of how to get that done. They're trusting that to you because that's your gifting. So they leave all those details to you. They want the results and they want you to get them there. An example of this is when we implemented small groups at the church. Pastor Rivers said he wants to start small groups on X day. He did not care which format I used to capture people's interest. He didn't care what forum I used to communicate with the leaders. He just knew all of those things were taking place and that they were how people were getting placed into groups, how they were notified of their group. He wasn't concerned with that. He was concerned with people being integrated into small groups and getting to benefit from that camaraderie and that discipleship opportunity. So constructing systems and process and plans, those are things that integrators do for visionaries. Another thing is collecting. Year over year, what we did last year, after we had the event, what did we say we wanted to do better or differently, or what went really well last time we want to make sure we do again? Those are things that I do collect so that when we come back to that again for the next year, I have all of those notes and we start from that place instead of starting from scratch with those events. Feedback from team members, from members, all of those things I can collect. I am collecting and pulling back up when we need them. Because a big part of the role is recollecting, bringing back the ideas, bringing back meeting notes. I will periodically audit my notes to see what loose ends are still there so that we can tie them. If we said we wanted to do an Advent study, or if we wanted to do this for our Christmas tree lighting this year, I will pull what we said before and bring it to everyone's recollection about what we said we wanted to do. And very important is covering, praying for them. You have an intimate look at exactly what their role is, and you can, I'm sure, see how much praying and covering your senior pastor would be essential to your role. Being a safe place and being forward thinking about what's coming up, what we need to start thinking about, what you need to bring up to the table for the team to make sure we're executing the vision that was cast. Some best practices. Who do they need you to be? Of course, they need you to be trustworthy. You will be privy to very sensitive and confidential information, and you need to be trustworthy to handle that well. They need you to be organized because generally they are, the beautiful mind with thoughts that are all over the place. So they need you to be the organized part of this equation. They need you to be personable because you are their representative. If no one ever wants to talk to the executive assistant, that's going to make their role really hard. You need to be approachable and personable, and a person that people feel comfortable coming to when they cannot reach the pastor or when you're gatekeeping for the pastor. You need to be resourceful and have connections and tap into resources that are available within the church congregation, within the community. Know who on your team is the keeper of certain types of information so you know who to go to when needed. You need to be full of integrity. And for me, that's about admitting my faults. If I mess up, I'm going to tell them I messed up. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. I just go straight to them and say, I dropped the ball. One Sunday morning at 6 a.m., I had to make a very difficult call and let him know that I dropped the ball on something. And that having integrity in that moment was met with much grace. So I'm very appreciative for that. And they need you to be spiritually maturing. Sometimes, not all the time, sometimes they are the pastor, but they don't need to always be your pastor in those moments. So I think it's very important that you prioritize your spiritual maturity and growing, tapping into what you need to be discipled in, and making sure that you're doing the things that you need to do to be spiritually healthy. Because if you're not, then it's going to be very hard and a struggle for you to do all these other things that are on this list, for you to be the person that this visionary needs. What they need you to do, first of all, have a system. I use a quarterly planner. I have a daily task list. I have a dated task list in my quarterly planner. So if he says, in 2 weeks, remind me of X, then I have a planner where I can flip forward 2 weeks and write that down. I'm not going to remember it any other way. If he says, in the spring, I want to do X, then I'll go into my planner and put in the first day of spring, remind him of X, Y, Z, so that my brain doesn't have to hold all those things. My planner is a tool that I use that helps me. I have an annual notes notebook. So in January of the year, I start a new notebook and has the date on it, and anything that happens in a meeting or a call or a conversation for that year goes in that notebook. In December, I'll close that one, put it on my shelf, and I will tell you, he has come to me and said, in 2019, we had a meeting and blah, blah, blah happened. Do you remember? And I have been able to go and pull that notebook and find the answer. And I think it's a credit to just having a system. Without a system, I don't know if I would ever be able to find that information. And it was dated, so that was helpful too. They need you to ask questions. What do you need to know to help them integrate that vision? Ask those questions. What questions do you think other people will need to know? What's the budget? What's the timeline? Who all do you want to be involved in this process? All these things. Get all of your questions answered so that you can run with what the information you've been given and develop the systems and plans and all processes that are needed to implement the vision. Don't be afraid to push back when needed. For me, this generally comes in the form of a question. So do you think that we have enough time to get this done? It's always respectful, and be okay if he says, yes, I do. Remember, he is operating, or your pastor, is operating, I'm saying he because my boss is a he, is operating from God's calling. So if this is what God is telling him to do, then obviously that's the direction we want to be found going in. Batch process. They need you to batch process, collect all the questions, all the concerns, all the requests from the staff, from the leaders, from the members, and bring them all at one time. And mainly do this to combat decision fatigue. If you have multiple children, for example, and they're each coming to you asking you, what's for dinner, what's for dinner, what's for dinner? That can be a little challenging to deal with. Or if there's people coming asking you about this project and this project and this project, that can cause decision fatigue because you're spending the whole day answering questions. So when I batch process and collect all those things, he knows that there's a set time that we are going to go through a group of questions and I'm going to get answers for everyone. This goes back to why I must be personable so people feel comfortable bringing their requests for him to me so that I can assist him in this batch processing part of the day. Find a rhythm. We have some things I will say for our weekly meeting, some things I will send in an email, some things I will send in a text, and these are like escalating, and some things I will call for. If I call him, he knows we have reached mission critical and he will answer because obviously I couldn't save it for a meeting. I didn't put it in an email. I didn't send a text. I am executing a phone call. We are at mission critical. And that's just the rhythm that we have developed that really works well for us. We meet regularly. This is when we do all of the batch processing. I get answers for other people, and having this regular meeting helps me give a timeline for other people for when I'm going to answer their questions. So if it is Thursday and I know I won't be meeting with him until Tuesday, then when that person asks, I say, okay, I'll get back to you mid to late next week. Managing that expectation for that person helps them not on Monday morning go, do you have an answer for me? No, not yet, because I have not had a chance to have that meeting. So I try to, having that standard meeting helps with the batch processing and giving timelines and setting expectations for others. It also sets a time where he knows that he is going to have to answer a lot of questions so he can focus. He knows he needs, he can set the right environment for himself so that he can answer all the things that he knows will come rapid fire to him during this meeting. We also have a weekly huddle where we look back over the previous week and we look forward to what's coming. And we also ask lots of questions to make sure everyone on the team is focused around the vision that we're trying to execute. Help the team fly in formation. This is by helping getting answers to everyone's questions so that they're all aligned with the vision. Sometimes he will copy me on communication for projects that I'm not involved in, just so I'm in the loop in case questions arise in the future. That leader knows since I was copied, they can come to me and ask any questions that they might have. And another big thing is anticipating needs. Situationally, what information, what tools, what resources will they need when they go into this upcoming situation? What format does he want it in? What else will he need to be looped in on before he goes into that? What pitfalls can we as a team avoid by our proper pre-planning and focus? So those are some best practices that I found over these years of working with Pastor Rivers in this role. Some helpful tools and apps that I use in the project management sphere, Asana, Trello, ClickUp, whichever one fits your personal style and needs. Project management software for teams is so helpful. You can assign projects and dates and timelines to one another. You can follow up. All the data and information is kept in one cohesive place that's searchable. Many of these project management softwares are online in the cloud, and they have a free version or a low-cost version that you can use as a nonprofit organization. But they are very helpful, especially if you're managing several big projects at one time. There's lots of automation that can be done through Asana. For that's the one we primarily have used at Union. You can integrate it with your email so that when you get an email, it creates a task for you on your calendar. Lots of helpful tools there in that project management sector in Asana. As far as communications, Voxer is an app that I use. It's like a walkie-talkie app, and I find this very helpful since I am remote. If I need to talk to one of our team members, I can send them what's called a Vox, which is a voice message, and that team member can get that, hear my voice. So there's no, sometimes if you text something or email something, miscommunication happens in the perception that the other person has when they hear it in their own voice, right? So if you use Voxer, they hear your intonation, they hear your voice, and it takes away some of those preconceived ideas that might be happening in the communications process. So I really love Voxer for that reason. And then it also does this chirping noise when I send one or when they send one back to me that alerts me that I had another message come in. Slack is another communication tool that kind of has a team. You can do team and group chats and task and project management through Slack. A tool that I personally need a lot is Grammarly. There's a free version you can integrate into your computer. It tells me when what I thought I typed isn't what I actually typed, and it helps me in my communication so that I can correct things before they go out, because remember, I am communicating on behalf of the senior pastor, and I don't want to have my communication riddled with grammatical errors and mistakes and things that would look badly upon him. As a church, we use Constant Contact for our mass emails to the congregation. Constant Contact has been around forever. Union has been using it forever. You probably have a software that you have been using. If you don't, Constant Contact is very user-friendly, easy to learn, easy to implement. Another communications tool that we use is JotForm, and we use this for our registrations. Anytime we need to do a survey or schedule people for signing up, like if we were doing registration to come to in-person worship, we would use JotForm for that. We've used it for Angel Tree, signing up to give away, to bring gift cards for the angels. We've used JotForm. We probably have 200 Jot forms right now within our system. We've used it for so many things. It integrates with Zoom, so you can do registration, and then it will send the registration automatically to the registrant, the Zoom information rather, to the registrant by email. There's so many. We use it for our contact form on the website and our Connect card when people come to in-person worship. Many, many uses for JotForm. As far as administrative support, Evernote is a resource that you can use to keep. I prefer to keep my notes by hand, but if you are a digital note taker, Evernote is a great option for that. Calendly is a great option for scheduling meetings. People can see availability and schedule themselves for meetings with you or someone on your team. LastPass is a resource that is encrypted and collects passwords for you so that you don't have to keep them in some sort of unsecure fashion. LastPass is a great resource for that. Either the Google Suite or the Outlook Suite. We are an Outlook Suite community. So we have the Outlook calendar, the OneDrive, all of the Microsoft suite that comes along with that. One of the things that I use a lot in my email communication is sometimes I'm working in the evening, but I don't want to interrupt my coworkers, or I don't want to give the impression to our members that I am working every evening at 8:30. So I'll schedule the email to come to them the next morning during the workday. And that is a feature that you can find on Google and on Outlook. My annual and quarterly planners definitely come in handy. And cloud storage, storing your files on Outlook, Drive, OneDrive, Google Drive, OneDrive on the Outlook suite, just so that all that important information that all those correspondences, all those plans, all those things that you're coming up with, don't let them just live on your hard drive that could one day crash and you lose all that valuable information. Highly recommend that you store these things in the cloud so that your team has access to them and you have access to them in the event of a computer failure or your separation from the organization. So, what happens when visionaries and integrators work well together? Well, one thing is God's calling. When the visionary hears God's calling and the team is able to effectively integrate, then the team now has a testimony of obedience to God's calling. Those strategic thoughts now become implemented strategy. Things that were researched and developed become results that have been developed. Ideas now are producing real results. The team has a clear direction from that big picture idea that was cast. Culture and culture shifts become contextualized messages that everyone can communicate clearly. We all are speaking the same language and pushing in the same direction. Big problems get big solutions. And when the vision is implemented, we will look back and we will see a legacy of great impact. So those are just some thoughts that I wanted to share with you about church administration and specifically how to assist the senior pastor. If you have questions for myself or many of my team members are here, they're hopefully willing to answer some if they don't fall into my realm of responsibility. So the floor is open for questions.
I have a question. And I'm not sure if this would be for you or maybe one of the other team members that you have, but I appreciate all the information that you shared so far. It has been very helpful. But what church management system do you use for like database management or CRM, as far as like members, keeping the member contact information? Whether, I know you said you do your registration with JotForm, but just kind of like the day-to-day church management.
Well, we use Realm, and we have multiple members of our team here who are very intimately involved with Realm. So if you have specific questions about that, they can answer them for you. But we use Realm, which is a part of ACS. Is that right, Alan? Yes, ACS.
And you said Realm?
REALM.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions I can answer or the team can answer? Okay, well, I'm going to think that maybe I answered all your questions. Probably not. So if you still have questions, you can reach out to me. My contact information is on the union website, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. And if one of my teammates would be better suited, I can get the answer for you. So thank you for your time. And if there are no other questions, I guess we can go ahead and end a few minutes early.
And you said your contact information would be where?
On the union, it's myubc.org.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. All right. Madam Moderator. Oh, Alan, did you have something?
Great job.
Oh, thank you. All right. Thank you all for being here. Y'all have a good evening. Enjoy the rest of the convention.